Hello and welcome. Cultural diplomacy is an important dimension of a country's soft power. The impact of India's soft power was felt long before the term was even popularized in the 21st century. Indian arts, culture, spiritualism have attracted people from all around the world for centuries. Now, under Prime Minister Modi, the new philosophical core of India's foreign policy can be defined as the Panchamrut policy. The 5 pillars are Samman or dignity, Samvad or dialogue, Samriddhi, prosperity, Suraksha, security, and finally Sanskriti or cultural linkages. Now, Sanskriti or culture is one of the themes of the TV9 Global Summit. India poised for the next big leap, Neha.
India poised for the next big leap indeed, Sandeep. Well, we are doing a series of special shows in the run-up to the big News9 Global Summit that's coming up this weekend. And on this particular show, we are going to highlight one of the big themes of this Global Summit, which, Sandeep, is India's soft power and smart power. Now, as you mentioned, that, this is something that the world has seen for a long time now. But I certainly believe that the one big leap that India did take on this front was last year with its G20 presidency. A lot of people felt that that was India's big moment in the sunlight. And India made the most of this opportunity because, the USP of that 1 year when India held the G20 presidency was that it was unlike any other. And this is something that's been acknowledged by all the visiting dignitaries who came to India. The government of India went out of its way to sell it as a people's presidency. It wasn't just a bunch of world leaders coming together and talking about, global relations. This was actually an opportunity for the people of India to get involved.
Absolutely.
The government decided to take it to small towns, small cities. They
Starting
were massive,
with Jammu and Kashmir.
including Jammu and Kashmir,
Yeah.
a place where you couldn't have imagined an international event on such a scale taking place with global dignitaries coming. And that was India's true, cultural heritage and smart power on display. If I could just bring in my colleagues Kartik Malhotra and Kartikeya Sharma into this conversation at this point. Kartik, if I could come to you. As Sandeep rightly pointed out, India's soft power is something we've talked about for eons now. For a long time we've been saying Bollywood has been India's biggest cultural export. Look how popular it is, how big India's cinematic stars are, from Raj Kapoor to Amitabh Bachchan to Shah Rukh Khan. But now we're at a stage where we've gone far beyond just Bollywood being popular or, us being a major cricketing power in the world. We've gone way beyond that in the Modi era, haven't we?
I think there are a couple of issues here. One, what is a soft power? Is it a product or a process? One, do you pursue soft power consciously? There are people who believe that Modi's answer or Modi's approach towards soft power is a little bit like smart power, a bit of hard power and a bit of soft power. The book which Jaishankar wrote, there was a very smart line which said that we prepared for the change in Delhi, and I was asked to take care of the arrangements for the rally which took place in the stadium. But the message was, and now you see, we see the soft power just in context of diaspora and Indian audience. The message from the Prime Minister's office then, or before everything was finalized, that it should make noise in Washington first and then in Delhi. So he utilized soft power differently. So I would say that yes, India has been practicing soft power even before Prime Minister Modi, Nehru, Bandung Conference, democracy, the third world, Africa unity. They have been part and parcel of soft power. But I think what we have excelled in context of non-hard power is that we are only sending boots on the ground when it comes to UN. But we don't do that by making allies or through alliances or through strategic partnership in which boots are required. So Indian soft power process is slightly different from other countries. It's just not cinema related. It's more about schools, it's more about building of dams like Salma Dam in Afghanistan. It's like building hospitals, or for example,
Or even the parliament in Kabul.
yes, Parliament in Kabul, or taking care of Angkor Wat through ASI.
No, in fact, Kartikeya, as we are speaking, there is an Indian delegation that's flying into Bangkok with the relics of the Buddha. There's a special pavilion being built there in Bangkok to exhibit these relics for a month, and that was done at a special request of the Thai government and possibly the king himself. And we know the deep cultural connect between India and Thailand. So that's a very big impact of our soft power. And literally, like you mentioned, we've been soft powers for we've been a soft power for centuries.
Absolutely. You see, that is Ramayana and Buddhist circuit, the cultural issues. But soft power is, I would say, is a complex process, because soft power also has its limitations. I know we are, our topic is to approach the possibilities of soft power. But soft power also has its challenges. And the challenge is, soft power does not alter the behavior of your neighbor. How much we did for Afghanistan did not alter the behavior of Taliban. How much we did for Nepal did not alter the behavior of the Nepalese government.
They might the Taliban might love Hindi films and K3G and all, but they
Yes.
that won't stop them from launching a suicide bomb attack at our embassy in Kabul.
Kartik, I was wondering, what your thoughts on this are. We're talking about how India has always been big on its soft power, but have we fully leveraged it? Yes, for example, today the United Nations and countries around the world observe the International Yoga Day on the 21st of June at the initiative of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Great win of our soft power. But do you believe that we've fully leveraged it?
So, Neha, what I'd like to add here is primarily something which all of you have already spoken about. And I think this confluence of soft and hard power, which Kartikeya rightly called smart power, is something which we have to look at it in its entirety. You cannot really have soft power as the only weapon in your arsenal to win popular opinion within India or outside India. Similarly, you can't have only hard power and pretend like, let's say, Putin, or pretend like, all other dictatorship countries out there, that as long as you have the military muscle or you have the economic muscle or both of these, you can go ahead and win every battle. I think the battle of opinion is what soft power endeavors to win for a nation or for a community or for a leader. Now, coming specifically to Prime Minister Modi, I think if I can inject a little bit of humor in this conversation, good old days, Jerry Maguire, you had me at high. I think for me, the biggest exposition of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's sort of leveraging of soft power was he had me at Mitron.
Right.
I mean, how often do we really see state heads, leaders of countries as diverse, as vast as India, to refer to countrymen as friends?
Yes.
So I think at some point we've got to see that there is, of course, Prime Minister Modi's own charisma, his own aspirations for the country, and his own exposition and expression of those aspirations, and really talking to the community. As a student of marketing and communication, I think at some point any leader who takes to a dais at any point wants to drive home a communication which very clearly tells the person who's the receiver of that communication what is in it for them.
Yes.
And what is in it for them, the answer is not always military hard power. The answer may not always be an economic benefit, but the message that you want to showcase is that, yeah, I'm a leader, or I'm a government, or I'm heading a government which is there working in your interest. So soft power plays out as well domestically as it plays out internationally. You mentioned Raj Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan. I think in the last 10 years, we've seen the only symbol of India's soft power being exposed globally is not Amitabh Bachchan, late Raj Kapoor, or even Shah Rukh Khan right now. There is just one name which is resonating with the diaspora and with anybody outside of the diaspora internationally, and we know what that name is. That name is M-O-D-I, Modi.
I agree.
Modi, absolutely. No, it's good points there, Kartik. The fact that there has been a deliberate attempt on the part of the government and of Prime Minister Modi to channelize this soft power, in reaching out to the diaspora and to the foreign countries. Earlier, there was never this thing. Like in the 60s, let's not forget the hippie movement. You've had Maharishi Mahesh, yoga and all of that. nothing on the part of the government. It all happened by itself.
See, government thought of soft power. That is why we had Indian Council of Cultural Relations. So it's not as if the soft power was not there. I think there is
more cultural diplomacy, I think it was
called. In 50s, 60s and 70s, you had soft power in context of what government wanted to do. And then you had independent entities like Bollywood, classical music, Spickmaker doing something.
Don't forget the concert for Bangladesh in 1971.
Or 80s under Indira and Rajiv Gandhi, where
Festival of India.
The Festival of India. I think there is a...
Or the Beatles being influenced by...
But that is completely non-government approach. That was by itself.
But that's more part of, the way West framed in India, like a she, oriental, timeless, exotic, changeless, non-material,
and I would say it was seen as the land of snake charmers.
Snake charmers and elephants.
Though Prime Minister says, now Prime Minister has about, he said we are mouse charmers, we are not snake charmers. So, that's more of Orientalism. But I think the largest shift which has taken place under Prime Minister Modi is, under Nehru, which was continued by Congress, was more around the symbols of Ahimsa, Gandhi, and primarily democracy. The shift, the content shift under Modi is India being a civilizational state. Now, that content is being reflected through various things. That content is being reflected through yoga. That content is being reflected through places of tourism that are being promoted. Every tourist circuit is being promoted. But there's a special emphasis relationship with Kashi, that cultural relationship. And the push that India is a old nation, a young country, with timeless ancient values. That is why you have Singal in Parliament today.
Yes.
That is why you have Singal in Parliament today. That is why...
Just below the Ashoka Chakra, another big symbol.
Absolutely.
So you think this is this marriage of India being an ancient civilization with also being, the fastest growing economy in the world.
That is the power of the market. I'm saying that in the soft power, Prime Minister has changed the content part also. Forms are there, tourism is there, Incredible India is there, everyone is aware of those things, as you mentioned G20, but G20 is also to do with the collapse of United Nations and Prime Minister's understanding that he needs to move the levers of the world through G20, there's another strong, so G20 also has another element, soft plus hard power, because UN has failed, or you can say that the powers have failed UN. But then Prime Minister has also changed the content of soft power, which is India being a civilizational state. And if you go through his speeches, rallies, the words he has started to use, for example, Ram Raj in Parliament, or before the session.
India is now Bharat.
Bharat. India being a civilizational state is being pursued very strongly, even in Jaishankar's book. And I'll close my argument there. He says that, we also inherit Western terminology, crossing the Rubicon, Trojan horse. He says, no one says Panipat movement, the Awadh syndrome.
Absolutely.
And Awadh syndrome best. And he quotes the famous film of Satyajit Ray.
Yes. And in fact, in Marathi, it's there in Marathi, the Panipat syndrome, Panipat Jhale. It means we, experienced a catastrophic defeat.
And there's something funny about this.
Language.
Since we're
like
talking
Nakba
about
in Arabic for Palestine.
For Palestine.
Yes.
At the G20 summit, Sandeep, we all saw this, that, the Prime Minister's, for example, name card actually said Prime Minister of Bharat.
Yes.
The invite that was sent out to the foreign dignitaries by the President of India said Bharat.
Right.
And, the slogan was Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is one family, something India's espoused for a very long time. But would you believe China had an objection to it? They actually raised an objection to it.
Sanskrit is not a language that's recognized by the United Nations.
Sanskrit is not a recognized UN language, is what they said.
Again, that is issue the civilizational soft power. But I think there's another very strong wheel of this soft power, Kartik. And that soft power is our techies abroad. That soft power is the nature of our economy. Some people can say it's not hardware, it's the software, but the software is also a soft power, isn't it?
I mean, see, you've had techies ever since the IT revolution started, and early 1980s is actually when we saw this bunch of Indian IT companies, largely service providers, Infosys, HCL, Wipro, etc., take on to this IT revolution which was kick-starting. But again, I think, if you look at it from the context of techies abroad and the stereotypes that have been associated with Indian techies abroad, that is not something that we as a nation have challenged. which is where soft power needs to play a crucial role. I'm not really, don't get me wrong, I don't want to say that, there should be more censorship of the kind of content which is making waves internationally. But again, to give you examples from popular culture, let's look at the film that Sridevi acted in, English Winglish.
Yes.
I think it fairly beautifully, in my opinion, married the phenomena of Indian leadership, a woman who's trying to make a living in a country where Hindi is not a language well understood, and really wants to learn that language and make an impression at the wedding which was coming up. But a completely contrarian example to that could be the very popular sitcom series called The Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
I mean, why is Raj Nair, whatever his screen name is, somebody who pretty much shows the world what India is not? Right. You have a man who's unable to speak to a woman without having a beer. Or you have a man who's actually, not confident about his origins and the stereotypes that are associated with his character, his parents wanting him to get married early. These are things that we need to start challenging with the kind of content that we put out in the international market and in the domestic market as well.
Kartik, speaking of smart power and what you just mentioned, let's watch a glimpse of our documentary Indian Ascent, which was shot where we spoke with a galaxy of global leaders on how the world sees India.
The sheer scale of India. This is the largest country in the world.
The fastest growing economy, so there's huge fascination and excitement.
It all depends on the leadership and what they're doing for the public and the people.
It's only Modi magic.
He makes other countries stand up and listen. This is the way he's been able to communicate.
Our relationship is prime for a momentous future. That future is today.
People called him a chaiwala. Look at him now. He's running a big country.
I do not think the United States can think of moving forward without India along its side.
There you have it. Deepak Patel, would you believe it? New Zealand spinner and now a very active member of India's diaspora, speaking up for India there. You were there at the Gujarat Summit.
Yes, you see, yes, I was there at the Gujarat Summit, and there is a word for soft power. And I think it sums it up. It's attractiveness. So, and soft power is a combination of a lot of things. Soft power should not result in an impression of cultural or economic supremacy. I mean to say, if you want to use soft power of culture, it should breed familiarity, but it should not breed inferiority complex. Yes. Then the purpose fails. That is why I said, is it a product or a process? I think it's better as a process. So that attractiveness should be there. So soft power has lot of like tourism is one. I think the another part of soft power is the food. We underestimate the power of that.
Yes.
Not because
chicken tikka masala.
I think we have gone beyond chicken tikka masala. I think we have gone beyond chicken tikka masala. Right. But the irony was that what people thought was an Indian curry in MasterChef was being represented by an expat Bangladeshi in Australia.
Right.
So,
that's a different story.
That's a different
South Asian story.
That's a South Asian story, and that was the whole trip about that she's a Bangladeshi in Australia representing the so-called, because everyone's saying this is Indian curry being Indian food. So you have food, the familiarity with food. Like what is Italian soft power apart from amor? It's Italian food.
Yes.
It's Italian food. Or what is sushi? It's a cultural symbol.
True.
I mean to say, sushi was just not food in India. Sushi was 10 years ago was class in India.
Right.
15 years ago, if you said sushi, it meant that you were coming from there.
Yes.
So
today it's takeaway.
Today it's on Zomato. Takeaway. So I think there are multiple strands, or like classical music, dance. Those are various strands of soft power. Issue is how have we harnessed it. I think the takeaway from Modi is, again I would say, his diaspora approach.
Yes.
I think that is something which is very, very important to his soft power. Through them, he makes a difference to the capitals they live, people. And second, it makes an impact back home. So there are two things happening. One is the heft and the second is the pride. Right. So heft and pride become two fulcrums of soft power because you don't really require boots on the ground.
Yes.
Can I in fact just build on that? Earlier, Kartik, referred to marketing and communication. I have to say that when it comes to marketing and communication, there's nobody better than Prime Minister Modi.
Yeah.
He is a marketing genius.
Yep.
He has sort of revolutionized political communication.
I mean,
the
Alan
way
Modi,
he reaches
Howdy
out to
Modi.
people. Howdy Modi. These are events that had never been seen under any other Prime Minister before. You know, even recently when the French President was here in town, Prime Minister Modi and he held a roadshow together in Jaipur.
Right.
You know, you and I earlier were talking, Sandeep, about how diplomacy has been taken outside of the capital.
Yes.
The Prime Minister has repeatedly taken the Chinese president, for example, to Ahmedabad, to Mamallapuram, the French president going to Jaipur. That happened with the G20 presidency. And going back to the masterful oratory that he has this command
there is a reason you have to understand in the West. People win elections. And what they don't get, and there is a word in Hindi for that, Lokpriya Neta. Now you can argue and you know, a critique can be that, you know, all the Lokpriya Netas are in dictatorial countries, you know. This public expression for the love of the leader, like North Korea to, you know, even Putin cannot do it. But for them to see that in a democracy,
someone who has to get elected every 5 years.
Elected 5 years is something which they cannot fathom, you know.
When was the last time that a politician, leave alone the Prime Minister of a country, was referred to as a rock star? I have not seen that in my lifetime before. Every time you were talking about his Diaspora Connect, which is unprecedented and unmatched.
Right.
Sandeep, we've seen this. Every time he's addressing the diaspora, whether in the United States or Australia, he gets a rock star reception.
He gets a rock star reception.
People
and he does it in Madison Square Garden.
Huge numbers. Imagine to address you know, a sold out Madison Square Garden. You've had situations where President Biden has told him, dude, you're so popular, you'll get me into trouble. I'm getting way too many calls. Everybody wants
getting into trouble anyway.
No, but that's interesting. You know, Madison Square Garden is where you had the concert for Bangladesh in 1970. George Harrison organized it.
Exactly.
And half a century later, you have an Indian Prime Minister there.
So it's not without reason that they call him a rock star.
The rock star analogy is absolutely right. But, you know, if I were to take it one step further, I think Modi is pretty much the multiplex film. There is something in it for everybody. There are 4 theatres, 5 theatres, 6 theatres, 8 theatres. You will have different forms of Modi playing out to different galleries. And that is what lends him that popularity, that credibility and that appreciation from the diaspora, from the non-diaspora settled abroad, from affluent Indians, from those who live in the farm sector. Maybe farmer protest right now is an aberration, but pretty much all the castes within India that Modi has spoken about, and all the castes that rest outside of India, you know, he gets a resounding welcome everywhere.
It's interesting. So, you know, that leads me to another question to Kartikeya, because you track the Congress and politics so closely. There have pretty much been only 3 Indian Prime Ministers with this kind of charisma. Before Prime Minister Modi, there was Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and before that, there was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. How is the Modi charisma different from his predecessors?
I think there are a couple of things. Jawaharlal Nehru was successor of Mahatma Gandhi, and the sort of the values he tried to bring united the entire nation behind him. For example, he is the first Prime Minister to have fought an election on secularism. On communal harmony. I don't think any election barring 52 was on communal harmony. So people loved him for who he was, despite making big mistakes. Indira Gandhi was apogee of nationalist politics, you know, powerful India. Prime Minister Modi, I would say, is more about aspirational India. But I would again say that time has come that the comparison of Modi will not be made with Indira Gandhi. It will be made with Jawaharlal Nehru. And I'll give you the reason. There is no Indira Gandhi School of Foreign Policy. There is no Indira Gandhi School of Governance. That cannot be, because emergency has really started the record of Indira Gandhi. There is no Indira Gandhi School of Governance. But there is a Nehruvian way of life. There is a Nehruvian aspect of foreign policy. There is a Nehruvian understanding of the Indian society, which is lecite. Hard secularism of the French type. Here is a civilizational man. So the comparison will be with both of them, but entirely 2 different poles. And I think,
so Panchamrut replacing Panchsheel.
I would say that Nehru was far more inspired by Buddhist motifs. if you read Nehru, he's drawing a lot of inspirations from various religions.
Right.
Various religions. Prime Minister's inspiration flows from Vasudev Kutumbakam.
Yeah.
You know, if I can borrow something that you mentioned, you know, the comparisons, Kartikeya, you know, I think it's important to point out that while you say that Prime Minister Modi is there for an aspiring India, I think the template for that was also set by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in taking India to commanding heights.
Right.
But I think the difference there being that you know, the kind of education, the kind of scholarly image that Pandit Nehru had, he could use a term called commanding heights and not allow it to resonate with the mass in the country. Prime Minister Modi, 75 years later, uses the term Vikasit Bharat, which everybody understands. They are pretty much saying the same thing. They are talking about industrialization, they are talking about an aspirational India, taking India to its ultimate destiny of development. But
again,
I think it's just
branding.
terminology. So it boils down to branding.
You know, Digital India, Khelo India, the branding that's happened in the Modi era. I think it's just taken India's soft power to a whole new level.
And even communicating, you're right, Neha. I think, you know, you're also, I mean, what is soft power? At the end of the day, it is the communication, right? One form of communication. You're communicating foreign policy, you're communicating military power, you're communicating economic prowess. But at the end of the day, it's all a function of communication. So
it is, but
even communicating,
sorry, sir, go ahead.
So I'm saying even communicating on the achievements of the Indian economy is pretty much soft power. You're attaining a certain rate of growth, but giving it those lofty numbers, 7 trillion, 30 trillion.
Or that we'll be a developed nation by 2047.
By 2047, you know, just contextualizing it for the person to understand and imbibe and giving a number or giving a vision to that aspiration, a very definite vision, is pretty much in the realm of smart power, as Kartikeya mentioned. It is economic power and soft power being communicated.
I'll give you two instances, personalized one. When you feel the soft power or the attractiveness of a country. I was traveling from Kabul to Mazar-e-Sharif, but this was before Taliban took over. The Chancery was attacked in 2011. So I was stuck outside. Mazar-e-Sharif is the southern steppe of Afghanistan. So if it rains, it becomes a slush. So I was stuck. There were no roads then. So, you know, and I was getting irritated because the next day I had to shoot and come back to Kabul the next day. So it takes 9 hours from Kabul to Mazar-e-Sharif. So I had to shoot and then get up early in the morning and come back because Shankar Menon was landing that day. And day after tomorrow there was a press conference. So before I could take out my passport, he said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm an Indian." He said, "That's okay. You can leave." So that is soft power, but then you would say that that's not Afghanistan state, there are Tajiks and Hazaras. But that's soft power. The second,
that's universal, even the Pashtuns would say the same to you.
The second instance was that I was traveling through Aleppo. And somehow the driver got lost and he took a route where the Chechens, Hezbollah and some other Shia proxy militia by Iran, they were manning the checkpost. And in Syria, you have the system, you travel 5 kilometers, you stop and there will be a checkpost and they will ratify the number of the car for the movement. So it's that militarized. So I think the guy did not pick up the phone, so he said, "Okay, you stand here." And I was worried because if I don't reach, then it's too dangerous, even at this point of time. And this was in 2019. It was cold. It was in January, and I thought, "Yeah, what is happening?" So the conversation started with Shah Rukh Khan. Then conversation went to Kareena Kapoor. Then conversation went to Salman Khan. And then conversation went to a couple of other Khans.
Bollywood was still soft power. It was a definition of Bollywood.
After that, they inquired about the affairs. They inquired about the affairs of all the Khans. And after they had the fill, they let me go.
Right.
Without calling back.
So that was the password, right? Make sure he's an Indian. He knows his Bollywood.
So they let me go. And this is like an honest reportage. And I wrote about it.
Right.
I wrote about it. I think that's the power.
Yeah,
in fact, let me go.
Neha, when I was in Afghanistan, 2001 again, I have that story as well. The only two things that I carried other than my passport was US dollars, of course. That's the currency there. And audio cassettes, Kabhi Khushi, Kabhi Gum. I can tell you that the K3G cassettes work far better than the US dollars, especially at checkpoints. They could not believe there was a movie with Shah Rukh Khan, Hrithik Roshan, Amitabh Bachchan and Karishma Kapoor. Kareena Kapoor. So that's how it is. It's just opened up gates and, you know, it's unbelievable. The power of thing when you see it yourself. Coming back to the other more tangible outcomes that we've seen of late, Neha? You spoke with Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa. What did he tell you?
You know, we talked, of course, about how big an opportunity it was for India on the global stage, and also the challenges, of course, that come with shouldering such a big responsibility. But I think the one thing that really leapt out at me in that conversation was when he repeatedly said that we are executing the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and his vision is that this is going to be a people's presidency. We're going to take it to the people of India. We're going to take it outside of Delhi, like I said earlier, to small towns, smaller cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities, all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. There were some 200 events, cultural events, where India's cultural heritage was on display, and culinary heritage, and everything coming together beautifully with participation from the Indian people. And he said this is unlike any other presidency. It's never happened before, but we're going to set a very high bar for those who follow us.
In fact, let's watch that interview that you did of Amitabh Kant.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe that India can evolve a consensus and bring all the G20 nations together on the global challenges that we currently face, addressing issues like climate change, food security, energy security crisis, supply chain disruptions? You talked about the need for the world to move towards a more inclusive and sustainable growth and development model. How much of a role do you think India is likely to play through the G20 summit?
No, India is playing a very critical role. India will evolve a consensus on all these issues, on all developmental issues, including growth, including financial inclusion, including climate, including many of these areas. We'll evolve a consensus. That's our job as leaders of G20 to evolve, and we'll fully succeed in that.
The People's Presidency, as Amitabh Kant called it. Kartikeya, you're both doing a session with Amitabh Kant at the Global Summit. What are you going to be asking him? Give us an insight.
Well, I think that is something that we'd rather wait for the 25th of this month. And let's not really get the cat out of the bag just as yet.
That's being secretive.
but I have one question for him. Challenges to soft power in times of war. Because the soft power gets tested when you have hard powers fighting with each other. So when you have a Ukrainian front, the front in Azerbaijan open, then you have the Red Sea front. I call it a different front.
The Iran front.
Iranian front. Then you have the war in Gaza, which is taking place.
Israel, my God.
Taiwan. Because soft power is about people-to-people contact.
And can I just add something to that, Kartik? If you have the time, please ask one question to him on my behalf. How on earth did you get all countries to agree on a joint statement, the New Delhi Declaration, with no reference made to Russia?
Absolutely. And for example, soft power. What was Vajpayee's policy on Kashmir? Soft power. It failed because of the position of the Pakistani army. Our FMR and Act East Asia policy, which is soft power. What? Tourism. You drive from Moreh and you go to Vietnam. That is soft power. Kaladan project, soft power. But the hard issues of a war in Myanmar has led to the collapse of the FMR, free movement regime. And now we have a fence. So soft power is being challenged globally because of very divisive politics. So there are challenges to soft power. I would like to really ask him that how will India negotiate it? Because India, there is one continuity. People don't understand. People think that there's everything about Prime Minister in context of discontinuity, but the Prime Minister's continuity in foreign policies, he's never off the book. He's not like any other politician. He's always, he goes by the brief, one. And secondly, he has not got into any military alliance. That has been, I would say, kernel of the Indian foreign policy.
But it's a continuation of Indian
policy. From Panditji to Narendra Modi, even Quad is not a military alliance. Every time we say it's not a military alliance. So in this context, how are we going to negotiate our soft power, smart power? Because hard power alliances are the biggest obstacle to movement of people. Capital moves. But it does not allow movement of people.
And maybe this is the reason, sorry Sandeep, that India is one country that can claim to be actually on great terms with countries that are currently engaged in war. When you talk about Russia and Ukraine, I mean, if there's one leader who's picked up the phone and spoken to both President Zelensky and President Putin, it is Prime Minister Modi.
Yeah.
You know, talking about the Israel-Hamas war, India can easily claim to have excellent ties with Israel, and we have great relations with the Arab world. The Prime Minister was there in Qatar and the UAE just last week, inaugurating Abu Dhabi's first Hindu temple, the UAE President referring to him as a brother.
Yes.
And I think this speaks to the point that Kartikeya just made, the fact that we're not part of any military alliances.
I met the Prime Minister personally once. It was in 2015, I remember. It was the small meetings of 15 20 journalists organized by then, now late Arun Jaitley. A lot of people are asking different questions. He said, you're not asking me the question. So I always keep that in mind when someone says, what will Prime Minister do? He said, you are not asking me about reforms in UN. Why aren't we sitting there? So I would say that the Prime Minister's vision for India is bigger than what people think where India should be. So in context of what India thinks today, I would frame it through somewhere between Vishwa Guru and Vishwa Maitri.
Right.
If I have to give that answer to you, Vishwa Guru and Vishwa Maitri, because of what we did during COVID, we shared the vaccine, and Vishwa Guru as someone who can give direction, a sort of a thought direction, not a hard military direction, a thought direction. And I locate his thought direction also in one thing. We have a functional democracy, which is the best thing about this country. Post-colonial nations don't have functional democracies. Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, I don't count Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Look at what has happened in Indonesia.
Exactly.
Joko Widodo's son is fighting with Prabowo, Gibran.
It's already begun. The fun and games.
So, and after Trump, what he did at the Capitol, his supporters, India is the beacon of democracy.
Yes.
With our own problems and failings,
yes,
with our little Chandigarhs,
right,
but we can still say we are the best.
We are the best.
I think it's not just the democracy, it's also the economic prowess at play, Kartik.
Market.
And that is something which I think is, I'm not sure if that is something that Prime Minister Modi would want to refer to, and if that is something that he would want to remind people of. But broadly, I think...
But that's his power, I agree with you. That's his power.
I'll tell you, there was, when India in the 1980s and early 1990s was growing at a growth rate of under 4%.
Yes.
There was a term for it. Yes. There was a term for it, which was called the Hindu rate of growth.
Yes.
Right. Today, the rest of the world, the developed economies are growing at that pre-liberalization Hindu rate of growth.
Right.
And look at India's true Hindu rate of growth in 2024.
Right.
Absolutely.
That is something that we really need to exercise.
Yeah.
Terminologies, acronyms that Prime Minister Modi excels at, and really talk about Hindu rate of growth 2.0.
In fact, I was discussing this with a diplomat guest on my show yesterday, Sandeep, and I said, what do you think gives India the courage to speak its mind in no uncertain terms, the way it's doing now? For example, Jaishankar repeatedly defending India-Russia ties, taking jibes at the West, saying this is a relationship that we stand by, and the fact that we now have this India first approach. What gives the Prime Minister the confidence? Is it the fact that he has a massive mandate and majority at home, or is it India's economic heft? It certainly is a combination of both those factors.
It's a combination of Maitri and Vishwa Guru, the Maitri and the Vishwa Guru combination. India's smart power, never been a better time for it as we are poised for the next big leap. That's the theme of our What India Thinks Today Global Summit. Thank you, Kartikeya, Kartik and Neha. We're counting down to the TV9 What India Thinks Today Global Summit. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest in the run-up to the biggest and boldest summit yet. Season 2 of Dialogue with Barun Das has just been uploaded on the News9 Plus app. We leave you with a glimpse of this cerebral conversation with German football legend Oliver Kahn, where the Bundesliga player speaks of how he didn't want to be, surprise, surprise, a footballer. Download and watch the entire series. Thanks for watching.
This is your time. You will make it for us. I would tend to think that you were more respected, less loved.
Goals are clear. I want to hear you all the 90 minutes shouting.
You went and almost appeared to be biting off the cheek of Henry Hegley.
Winning is easy. When you are losing, you show your real character.
You had a ligament torn during the 2002 World Cup final. right? Don't talk about that.